It began like every other peaceful evening. I was organizing clothes near the windowsill, golden sunlight streaming gently across our floors when my spouse's device chimed from nearby. Nothing strange. The phone constantly received notifications. Messages, game scores, workplace conversations. But this moment, I looked. Everything changed instantly. Booking confirmed for 2 people Friday 8 p.m. Romantic dinner special. Those words appeared on his screen like hidden truth finally surfacing. My pulse quickened. Actually soared. I pressed my palm against my lips, giggling like youth. He hadn't forgotten. I assumed he had. Our special date remained weeks ahead, yet this must be his plan. Lord, considering our struggles, the endless. Quiet, meals consumed before different televisions, how he occasionally seemed like just company, this meant something. Perhaps everything. Perhaps he still wanted me. I could hardly complete the clothing task. My thoughts raced forward frantically. What outfit? I hadn't purchased anything personal recently. Now I browsed every website imaginable, examining gowns like preparing for graduation. I discovered the ideal choice. Sophisticated dark blue, fitting perfectly while maintaining some allure. I bought matching footwear. And I began visualizing. My hairstyle, which makeup, his expression seeing me enter. For ages, I felt treasured, noticed, selected. Tomorrow, I marked Friday like a celebration. I stayed silent, naturally. Never mentioned anything directly. Some part hoped he'd maintain the mystery, stay casual until the final moment. Maybe he intended taking me somewhere meaningful after all this time, and I refused spoiling his preparations. I fantasized during ordinary activities, waiting at stores, cleaning teeth, arranging clothing. I pictured us at flickering tables. Hands touching, joy floating between us like before. Then the footwear. I hadn't worn heels recently. But I purchased pairs making me feel strong, assured, like my former self before children, expenses, employment, and tiny things eroding you. Daily. I scheduled hair styling. Nothing extreme, just professional treatment, enough feeling renewed. I was bringing myself to that meal. Not the exhausted version, not the overlooked version, but the woman still commanding attention, including his. Every evening before Friday, I watched him during dinner. He used his phone frequently, and I wondered, is he contacting the establishment? Confirming arrangements, considering what he'll say surprising me. I'd examine his expression, seeking hidden meanings in his silence. My heart believed, actually knew that something wonderful approached, something reminding me we deserved the work. Thursday evening, my ensemble waited on the bedroom door like a vow. The shoes remained boxed, wrapping partially folded, awaiting their opportunity. I kept imagining his reaction when I appeared at the establishment, his amazement, the satisfaction. Maybe that old attraction missing for years. I envisioned clinking glasses, his hand seeking mine across surfaces, and that expression saying wordlessly, "You're everything." Honestly, I required that. Not just the meal, the sensation, that hint of passion I thought had disappeared beneath routine and settlement. I'd contributed so much to this union, to him. And perhaps, possibly, this dinner meant he recognized it, recognized me, all the work, the silent sacrifices, the faithfulness. That brief notification felt like barriers opening after endless cold, allowing warmth inside. When Friday finally came, I awakened with excitement like youth before her initial romance. I had the schedule organized. Beauty treatments, styling, time soaking in relaxation and breathing peace I hadn't experienced recently. Every small element felt special. I smiled more than in months. I kept checking time, calculating remaining hours. Because tonight, I believed I'd enter a memory lasting forever. An evening just ours. An evening I didn't realize would transform everything. Friday afternoon arrived, I practically radiated. My nails were finished, my hair sleek and bouncing, and my gown hung on the washroom door like a mystery I was eager to share. I even ignited one of those candles I'd been preserving, the costly type, letting its gentle vanilla fragrance flow throughout the house. Every piece of me vibrated with expectation. I kept expecting him to mention something, anything. But he remained quiet. Not one word, not one clue, just silence and television sounds. Still, I maintained hope. Maybe he was preserving the surprise until the final possible instant, like those film moments where the man reveals the scheme with a wink and extended hand. I kept watching the clock. 5:36. I refreshed my eye makeup. 6:30, I put on the dress. My phone stayed beside me constantly just in case he sent something sweet or said he was collecting me. At 7, I wore my heels. They created soft sounds against the wooden floor. My heart beat so rapidly I could barely breathe. Then the notification arrived. Honey, I won't be home for supper. Getting beverages with the friends while we watch the match. That was all. No symbol, no regret, no mention of me. I stared at the display, blinking like maybe the text would reorganize into something else, something less harsh, less empty. But they didn't. And I felt something within me, a connection, break. I didn't move briefly. Just stood there in my heels and that carefully selected dress like a woman trapped in a picture. Mid-smile, mid-dream. My phone still glowing in my palm, creating dim light on the material I'd chosen with such hope. I read the notification again, then again, getting beverages with the friends, casual, dismissive, like I didn't exist, like all the excitement I'd built for days was a joke only he wasn't enjoying. That's when the earlier alert flashed through my mind. The booking for 2. Friday night, 8 p.m. Romantic dinner special. That hadn't been an error. It hadn't been confusion. He had made that arrangement, just not for me. I could feel it in my chest, that slow, burning pain that begins as disbelief and quickly becomes something deeper, something sharper. It wasn't grief that came next, not even heartbreak. It was understanding. Cold, electric understanding. I placed the phone down slowly, walked to the mirror, looked at the woman staring back at me, refined, glowing, fully prepared for a love story that no longer existed. And something shifted within me. I wasn't going to weep. I wasn't going to plead. I'd spent too many years loving quietly, forgiving quickly, waiting patiently. Tonight, I would not wait. If he made a booking for 2, I was going to ensure he remembered exactly who the other woman was supposed to be. I fastened my dress with hands steadier than they had any right to be. There was no trembling now, no second guessing. I wasn't just getting dressed anymore. I was preparing for battle. Every curl in my hair, every stroke of mascara, every piece of jewelry I fastened was a silent promise to myself. I will not be invisible tonight. Not to him, not to her, not to anyone who dared to watch this unfold. I checked the time, 7:15 p.m. He'd already be there now, settling in, maybe ordering beverages, maybe even practicing the same tired lies he'd told before. But what he didn't know, what he never saw coming, was that I'd be walking through those same doors, not to plead, not to make a scene, but to be seen fully, fiercely, without apology. I put on my heels again, grabbed my purse, and looked in the mirror one last time. That woman looking back at me, she wasn't broken. She wasn't small. She was done pretending not to notice, done swallowing her intuition. Tonight, I wasn't going to wait around to be chosen. I was going to show up and let the truth pull out the second chair at that table he thought he could hide in plain sight. I arrived at the parking area at 7:55 p.m. Precisely. Not a moment early, not a moment late. The establishment's soft golden light spilled through the windows, casting everything in a warm, deceptive glow. Romantic, intimate, the type of place we used to reserve for anniversaries. I sat in the vehicle for a beat, hand on the ignition, breathing through the quiet storm building inside me. And then I stepped out, not timidly, not nervously, but with purpose, with poise. My heels clicked against the pavement like punctuation marks. The hostess barely looked up before smiling and greeting me, but I didn't need help finding him. I spotted him almost instantly there by the window, the best table in the house. Of course, he always did like a view. He was sitting back, grinning, talking low across the table. And then I saw her, blonde, younger, polished in that effortless, trying a little too hard way. She laughed at something he said and touched his hand. His hand. I didn't feel my heart break. That had already happened. What I felt now was something far more controlled, calculated. I straightened my spine, smoothed my dress, and started walking. One step, then another. People glanced up. Conversations slowed. You could feel the shift in the room as I moved through it, like someone had dimmed the lights and turned up the tension. Every pair of eyes began to follow me, including his until I stopped right at their table, looked him dead in the eye, and smiled. He froze, fork midair, smile dying on his face like someone had pulled the plug. His eyes darted around as if he could somehow rewind the moment, as if there were a version of reality where I wouldn't be standing there in that dress and those heels in front of that woman and her. She looked up at me like she was trying to place me. Like I might have been a coworker, a friend, a stranger, but I wasn't any of those. And with a coolness that surprised even me, I leaned slightly forward. I just enough to make a reservation on their comfortable little battlefield. Just forgot to tell your wife who the second seat was for. My voice didn't tremble. My hands didn't shake. I delivered the line like I'd rehearsed it, because maybe somewhere deep down I had. For years, every ignored instinct, every brushed off suspicion had been building to this moment. You could have heard a pin drop. The air turned thick. Their waiter, poor thing, stood nearby like he'd walked into the middle of a live soap opera. Phones started coming out discreetly. I saw them in the corners of my vision. Little glowing rectangles held low, capturing the scene like it was theater. But I wasn't performing. I was reclaiming, rewriting, standing in my own power with a grace that didn't need to scream. And he knew it. Oh, he knew it. He tried to speak. Some panicked jumble of my name and an excuse half formed like his mouth couldn't keep up with the damage already done. I didn't let him finish. I didn't need to hear the lies tumble out again like a script he barely rehearsed. I turned slightly toward her, letting my gaze fall on her manicured hand, still resting near his wine glass. She didn't move, didn't breathe. And I saw it, the flash of shame, the instant she realized who I was, who she was. But I didn't yell, I didn't cry. That wasn't the woman who showed up tonight. I stood tall, calm. I simply reached for the wine glass sitting on my husband's table, the one I knew he ordered because it was my favorite. I held it delicately, let it catch the light for a moment, then raised it. To liars, cheaters, and the women smart enough to catch them, I said. My voice was smooth as velvet, the kind that cuts without raising a blade. And then I placed the glass back down, slow, deliberate. I turned, lifted my chin, and walked away with every eye in the room watching. Phone still up, jaws slightly open. I didn't need to look back to know that I'd changed something. Not just in him, not just in her, but in me. That night didn't end the way I expected when I first saw that reservation. But it wasn't over yet. Not by a long shot. The silence behind me as I walked out was deafening. The kind that fills a room when people stop breathing just to make sure they don't miss a thing. I didn't rush. I didn't falter. My heels clicked against the floor like a metronome, keeping time with every heartbeat that echoed behind me. I could feel their eyes on my back. Diners, servers, strangers, each one a witness to something they hadn't seen coming when they ordered their appetizers. But I had seen it coming. I just chose for too long not to believe it. Even as I passed the bar, I caught a few stunned expressions. One woman actually smiled at me. A slow, almost reverent nod, like she was silently cheering. And God, that meant more than I can explain. Not pity, not shock, respect, a knowing kind of recognition that only another woman could give. One who'd Probably stood in the same heels, holding the same shattered illusion, and decided to stand taller instead of breaking. I reached the door, pushed it open, and the night air hit me like a second wind. It wasn't cold. It was crisp, clean. I closed my eyes for a breath, just one, and let it sink in. What I'd just done, what I'd finally seen. And somewhere behind me inside that dimly lit restaurant, the wreckage of my silence was still settling. And he was sitting in it right next to the woman who thought she was stealing a man until she watched his wife walk out like the show didn't even need an encore. I didn't get far before my phone buzzed again. His name on the screen, a call this time. I let it ring twice, 3 times. Then I declined it. I stood on the sidewalk in front of that glowing restaurant, traffic humming in the distance, and stared at his name one last time before I blocked the number. Not because I was angry, not because I wanted to punish him, but because I finally understood the difference between being wanted and being respected. And I wasn't going to settle for breadcrumbs anymore. I could see movement through the restaurants windows, the hushed chaos that follows a scandal. The waiter, who'd paused mid-step earlier, now speaking with a manager, guests leaning across their tables to whisper, hands cupped, eyes wide, and right there, still frozen in his chair, was the man I once built a future around, now unraveling one embarrassed breath at a time. He wasn't chasing me. He wasn't storming out to fix it. He was just sitting there exposed. And the woman, she couldn't even meet his eyes. She was already reaching for her purse, shifting in her seat, looking anywhere but at him. Because that's the thing about affairs. They look so glamorous in the shadows, but they crumble under real light. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to throw a drink or cause a scene. The truth was loud enough all on its own. And in that moment, I knew I'd served it to him the way it needed to be served. Hot, humiliating, and in public. As I walked to my car, I didn't cry. I didn't tremble. I felt free. For the first time in years, I wasn't shrinking to make someone else comfortable. I wasn't quieting my instincts or questioning my worth. I had faced betrayal head-on. Not behind closed doors, not in whispered arguments at midnight, but in full view of the world. And I walked away with my dignity intact and my head high. Let them talk. Let them post. I had nothing to hide anymore. When I slid into the driver's seat, my reflection caught in the rearview mirror. There I was. Not the woman he thought would fall apart, not the woman who used to beg for scraps of affection, but me. Strong, certain, still beautiful, but not because of the makeup or the dress, because of the fire in my chest that refused to die, even after years of being dimmed. I smiled at her, the woman in the mirror. I hadn't seen her in a long, long time. As I pulled out of the parking lot, my notifications were already buzzing. I didn't even check them. I didn't need validation. The victory wasn't online. It was in how I showed up, in how I left, in how I didn't break when I had every reason to. But I had no idea what was waiting for me when I finally looked at my phone. The next morning. What started as a quiet confrontation was already becoming something much, much bigger. I woke up to the sound of my phone vibrating across the nightstand, not once, not twice, but like it was begging to be noticed. I rubbed my eyes, reached for it, expecting maybe a string of desperate messages from him, but what I saw stopped me cold. My name everywhere, texts, mentions, screenshots. A friend had sent a link to a video. I clicked it and there I was, clear as day, striding through the restaurant like a woman with nothing left to lose or prove. My voice steady, my toast perfectly delivered. It had been recorded from someone's phone at the next table. Shaky, raw, but utterly cinematic. By sunrise. It had already spread like wildfire. Wife crashes romantic dinner in the most elegant takedown ever. That was the headline. I watched myself walk away on screen, heels clicking, shoulders back, the whole restaurant watching. And suddenly, so was the world. I started getting messages from strangers, women older, younger, some crying, some cheering, some saying, "I wish I had done what you did." Even the restaurant staff messaged me. One of the servers, a young woman, probably still in college, thanked me for showing what strength looks like without raising your voice. She said it was the most iconic thing she'd ever witnessed. And then came the flowers. A bouquet from the restaurant itself. No note from management, just a card that said, "Thank you for reminding everyone what self-respect looks like." I stood there holding those flowers in my kitchen, laughing, crying, shaking my head. I had no idea my heartbreak would turn into a revolution. By noon, I'd lost count of the messages. Former coworkers I hadn't spoken to in years were reaching out, telling me how proud they were. Women from other countries, bloggers, podcasters. One message stood out. A woman in her 60s wrote, "You spoke for all of us who stayed silent too long." That hit me in a place I hadn't let anyone touch in years. Because this wasn't just about one dinner or one betrayal. It was about all the nights I'd convinced myself it wasn't that bad. All the times I'd swallowed my voice to keep the peace. I filed for divorce that week, quietly, cleanly. There was no dramatic fight. No screaming match, just papers signed, a ring slipped off my finger, and a chapter closing that had needed to end long ago. He tried, of course, tried to spin it, tried to call. But what do you say when the whole world saw who you really were? I didn't need revenge. I didn't need him to gravel. I already had everything I needed. Peace, clarity, and an inbox full of dinner invites from people who'd seen my power. Not my pain. It was strange the way people reacted. Some treated me like a hero, others like a cautionary tale. But I didn't care. I wasn't here to be anyone's symbol. I was just done disappearing. And if my story lit a fire in someone else, gave another woman the courage to stand up, walk away, say enough, then maybe all those years of trying to hold a crumbling marriage together weren't wasted after all. Maybe they led me here. A week later, I sat on my porch with a glass of wine, my favorite, finally uncorked for me. No occasion, no performance, just stillness. The sun was low, casting everything in that golden hour kind of honesty. I scrolled through the final headlines, the comments, the reposts. People had given it all kinds of names. The classiest takedown of the decade. The quiet storm in stilettos. One podcast called it a masterclass in self-respect. But what no one saw, what no camera caught, was what came next. Healing didn't look like a fairy tale. It looked like quiet mornings. Fresh coffee. Empty rooms that no longer echoed with lies. I started writing again. I started laughing again. I started feeling like myself again. Not the woman who waited for scraps of attention, but the woman who made a table for herself when she wasn't offered a seat. And somehow out of the humiliation came a strange and radiant pride. I hadn't just caught him. I'd caught myself before I lost her completely. So yes, he made a reservation for two. Romantic, intimate, just not with me. But what he didn't know, what he never saw coming, was that I'd turn his cheap secret into a moment that reached thousands, a moment that said, "You don't get to write the ending." And as I sat there on my porch, watching the sky turn orange and violet, I whispered the final line out loud, not for him, not for the world, but for me. He thought he reserved a table for romance, but I gave him a seat at his own downfall.